What's happening, folks? Welcome back. Before we get to today's video, I have to tell you about our sponsors, OneFootball. The OneFootball app is the best football app on the planet. You can get lineup notifications for every Celtic game as soon as the teams are announced on match days. You can get goal alerts from games from all around the world. You can keep tabs on league tables from all around the world as well. You can add widgets to your home screen to keep up to date with Celtic's next fixture, who it's against, what the kick-off time is, all that sort of stuff. And you can get all the Celtic-related news sent straight to your phone as soon as it breaks through push notifications as well. You can download the OneFootball app by clicking the link in the description of this video. It's free wherever you get your apps on your phone, and it's a great way for you to support Celtic Fans TV. So if you haven't downloaded it already, click the link below, get involved, and let me know what you think. I hope you enjoy the video. Cheers. Yes, folks, welcome back to Celtic Fans TV. We're fashionably late as usual. I promise it will be on time for one of these live streams. We're here to discuss the latest in the developments of Celtic's pursuit of a new manager. I've got Kenny and Martin with me. This is a live format as usual. You can ask your questions in the live chat box below and we'll try and pick out any good ones as we go through. Guys, we've had a couple of days to digest the hectic goings on and the collapse of the Eddie Howe deal. Kenny, we'll try and keep the Eddie Howe portion of this relatively short, but what did you make of it on Friday when it broke?
I mean, I think of all the board failings that have happened in the last 12 months, and there's been many, not being agile enough to move Lennon on, taking the players to Dubai in the middle of a pandemic. This is worse. I think this hits home worse. Not being in a position to appoint the biggest job of any board at any point in time is to appoint the football manager to set us off in the right direction, and to leave us 2 weeks ahead of pre-season when they've had the luxury of months to try and sort something out is just unforgivable. And when we went to Dubai and it was a problem, okay, it was embarrassing. When we never moved Lennon on, the reality is we were probably not going to win the league anyway. This is an error of such gross level. It could set us back for an untold amount of time. I do believe it's of that order. Why, I just assumed naively that a man of Dermot Desmond's experience, a multi-billionaire who's tied up contracts far more complex than this, would have something nailed down legally. It's amazing that he let it roll on for 3 months when at any given point, Eddie Howe could just have lifted the phone to him and called it off. I'm staggered that they actually left us in that vulnerable position. Peter Lowe as well. I mean, he's a man who, okay, he's been on some flack lately, but he's had a long career in this type of game. He's been pretty well heralded at high echelons of the European game, and he does something as amateurish as this. It's incredible. And they should have drawn it to a head earlier. Why? Okay, if Howe's messing us around, that's out with their control. But draw that to a head in good time, whereby you have then some contingency time to go in and get someone else, maybe not at his level because he was a bit of a coup, but someone slightly beneath his level that still suits us and still acceptable to the fans. There are people out there. Lavery's out there. Nuno Gomez is out there. Villas-Boas is out there. I'm not a scout. These are just names that are available. They're ones that are just available. There are plenty of guys in jobs that would move. But give us the time to be agile enough to do that. It's amazing that they've left it until June when the guys are just about to return back for pre-season and we're left with no other option than to go with someone who is of a calibre whereby he would be quite happy just to accept the job under any circumstance because he's nowhere near the experience level, in my opinion, to throw into a club like Celtic. So I'm pretty stunned by it. On Friday, I was devastated by it, and I was actually amazed by it that they've thrown us into this position. Dominic Mackay, I'm a bit reluctant to throw criticism at him, but one of two things has happened. He's either not had the gumption or the foresight to get involved. He's been here long enough he's going to preside over this. He's either not had the gumption to get involved or he's not been astute enough to help Lowe and Desmond make right decisions, or he's stuck his hand up and he's been ignored because he's not getting any power. And both of those things worry me as well. That's a little backdrop to this. I don't think things have really changed a great deal since Dom Mackay came in. And although he's not in post, he's senior enough to be shown some influence, I think, at the boardroom at this point. And that's a monumental failing right at the start. So really angry about it, Paul. It's been a hard one to get over. I'm fearful that with a £40 million bounty, with whoever the winners of the league are next season, that we're not going to be on the end of that. I think that would have been a tall order anyway, but we had a chance with a good pedigree manager. I think we've got a far reduced chance now, and that's on the board. And I'm worried, I'm worried what happens at the end of next season if we don't win the league and the finances swing. There's a greater gulf in finances than there is at the minute. And it's at the board's feet. And I think they've got an explanation owed to the fans.
Yeah, Martin, I think as the negotiations dragged on into the 2 and 3 month range, you always had that feeling that maybe something wasn't right. And obviously nothing is ever confirmed until somebody's been officially unveiled and signed a contract. But as Kenny's alluded to there, it shouldn't have been allowed to drag on to this stage where we would be left open to this sort of situation where we are approaching June and the number one candidate, we put all our eggs in that basket, we waited on him. If the club are to be taken at their word, then I think we should be hesitant to buy everything they've said about it. But they gave him all the time to assemble his backroom team, but 3 months in, it transpires that his backroom team don't want to relocate to Scotland. Surely that could have been ironed out in day one or at least week one of any negotiations.
I think it would have been minute one. I think that's a disgusting excuse and explanation. So where are we now as fans? I think we go from I know you say we don't want to talk about Eddie Howe too much, but we can't help but start with Eddie Howe. But you go from how to why, which is where we are now, trying to understand why, to some people already moved on from that and said I couldn't care why. We're on to who, and then we're on to when, which Kenny's alluded to already. So, but reflecting on Eddie Howe and what the club have said, so the statement said he made it clear he wasn't looking to return to management until the summer at the earliest. So when does summer start? Is that June? Is it July? Is it August? When is it? When does the summer officially start? And what did he mean by that? And were we prepared to accept that was going to be the earliest? Because that's what they've said in their statement. I'm not making that up. So the summer at the earliest. So we were prepared to go back to him when? At the start of the summer and say, you still interested? Or do you want longer? Or you're not going to come back into management at all? Is that the risk that we really were prepared to take? Is that the level of commitment we got from this guy? Because that's what the club have told us. That's what they've said in their statement. And then they go on to tell us he'll not be joining for reasons out with both his and Celtic's control. Well, do you not think the fans deserve an explanation and a bit more clarity than that? Because if the reason is his backroom staff, then that is completely within his control. Of course it's within his control. How many backroom staff are out there? Does he have to bring these 3 or 4 people with him, or could he bring others? So that's a nonsense statement as well, unless there's more to it than meets the eye and it's nothing to do with the backroom staff. It's deplorable that we're sitting here guessing this stuff, because in the circumstances that we find ourselves in, 95 days since we had a manager, we should be given a bit more clarity. It's totally disrespectful. And the Celtic then go on to say, we aim very shortly to announce the appointment of a manager with the quality and desire to take Celtic forward. If they do that, it'll be the 3rd time in our history they've done that. And I don't believe they will do that. I don't believe we'll be inspired by the appointment. And Kenny, Paul, you guys, I've said it a million times. Celtic throughout their history haven't done it. They've done it twice, and it was Celtic men that it suited them as much as it suited us. So I believe we'll be disappointed. And the last thing Celtic Football Club needs right now is further disappointment after a season that was littered with disappointment after disappointment after disappointment. We need to lift the mood. We need some positivity. We need thousands of fans outside the stadium excited by the appointment, and it's not looking likely right now. But the Celtic statement disappointed me massively. How much it's true, how much it's factually correct, accurate, I've no idea. But every single bit of it, and you put the bones in it, I've tried to do that today, is disgusting. It causes more confusion than clarity. You know, the first team's due back in 18 days, and we don't have a manager, and I think it'll be a panic appointment now. But I don't know where we are. We'll have to get over the Howe thing, but you cannot help but want a post-mortem over it, and you want the club to be accountable for the negligence, for waiting that length of time. I mean, we should have been appointed in September last year. After no shots on target against Rangers in the first game at home, we should have been saying enough's enough. Then into the Champions League, Champions League, I suppose, first and foremost, but then the Europa debacle. We allowed that to go on and on and on, and here we are sitting in, June in 2 days' time for something that should have been made to change in September last year. So that's 9 months. 9 months we've taken to make this change.
Yeah. It is remarkable, that timeline, and I say it all the time, it seems like Celtic are the only football club in the world that can take this long to make a decision like this. Kenny, two things strike me about that line in the statement that says these were things out with Eddie and Celtic's control. Number one, that Eddie Howe didn't either have the desire to take the job without all of his people being with him, or that Celtic didn't sell him on what the vision was, where the club was going, perhaps his budget, whatever it might have been. But I don't think you can just swallow the excuse that because a couple of his backroom staff didn't want to relocate to Glasgow, then the whole thing just goes up in the air.
It doesn't sound true. They're trying to absolve both themselves and Eddie Howe of blame in a statement just to try and appease the fans as if they're naive enough to believe that. I mean, Eddie Howe would. Do you think he's going to just sit and not lift the phone to the people that are critical to the decision for 3 months? These are his trusted allies. He can speak to them informally whenever he likes. There's nothing wrong with phoning them up and saying, "Would you go to Glasgow? Yes or no?" Of course, that question was posted. Of course, question was posed to them before now. So that's not the reason. I mean, if you're asking me sceptically what the reason is, I think he's probably not actually been. His heart's not been entirely in it the whole way. He's probably had some interest, sort of strong interest in it, but there's something's been nagging at the back of his mind to stop him putting pen to paper. And I think he's maybe been tapped up towards the end. It wouldn't surprise me if a team in the second, the lower half of the English Premier League announce him in the next couple of weeks. That would be my own view, but I don't know. It's completely speculative. But there's no way that neither he nor Celtic are to blame. Celtic are to blame, and I don't really care if he's to blame, but we'll never see him again, and he was never duty bound to sign to us. If he can mess us about as much as he wants, it only affects him. But the board are representing us. The board have got to come. Well, they are responsible for the failure. This is almost like they're forgetting who Celtic are. Celtic, you ask some of the top players in world football what the most euphoric environment they've ever played football in, it's Glasgow Celtic. And that's not overstating it. There's a weight behind what we can offer a manager. We should have pride as a club. We shouldn't sit there and hope that someone, let's face it, it's not like it's a Zinedine Zidane. Okay, he's a good coup for the club, but he's not like some unthinkable manager that we would never in our wildest dreams have got. Why have we let him dictate to us for 3 months and put our future at risk without any contingency? The board have been short-sighted, and I think they've undersold Celtic. And I think they should be going out and selling Celtic to other people now that he's not. They should have been doing it in parallel, but their plan B should be far greater than what appears that they're going to land for. And that statement was a nonsense. It's not factual. There's no way in this world that it was entirely down to a phone call between Eddie Howe and his staff just before we came into June, when they probably spoke to him in December or something. It's just trying to placate fans through a lie.
Yeah, we'll come to talk about Ange Postecoglou and relative credentials as well as we can without knowing too much about him, Martin. But Kenny touched on something there about Eddie Howe being a coup for Celtic. I tweeted yesterday that it looks like we're going to end up in a situation where instead of Celtic getting a coup in the form of a top manager, Celtic is going to be the coup for the incoming manager, who is someone who's never managed in Europe. And to have a club like Celtic as your first job in European football is quite a big thing to be put on your CV.
It's not good enough. In my opinion, it's not good enough. I know we're going to go through maybe one or two candidates and their credentials, but it's not good enough for Celtic to be signing managers like that. I mean, we cannot have another Ronny Deila. I've seen a lot of people on social media talk about nobody really knew about Wim Jansen. Wim Jansen didn't have a successful. I know he stopped 10 in a row, but he's the number of points he amassed that year was not a successful year. I mean, we nearly blew it, and we were drawn every second week. And he was lucky enough to have one or two superstars in his team as well, which is worth a mention. But we cannot afford to go down the road of bringing in a rookie manager who doesn't have experience in Europe and the credentials that we are looking for, used to winning every single week. They'll not handle the pressure, because that manager's going to start on the back foot with disillusioned fans, and the pressure's just going to mount from day one. It's going to become untenable. So it's not fair on that individual to come in, and it's not where Celtic should be. And particularly after we've been through the last year, the club lost something back. I know their mission statement or their branding now says a club built to last. they're essentially saying to the fans, we're not going out to spend fortunes. We're not in a position to do that. And you wonder if that's partly because it will come out in the wash maybe one day that it's all came down to budget. For guys like Eddie Howe and anybody that comes in, it's down to budget, and that's why we can't attract the top managers, because we're not prepared to give them a budget that they're comfortable with. As much as Kenny talks about the club and the fans and the atmosphere and our history and all the rest of it, if you don't give them a budget, they're not interested. So I really, really worry that somebody will come in and our history is littered with us giving managers an opportunity to manage at the top level, and Celtic being their first real appointment. Again, we've done that time and time again, mostly with ex-players, and I'm almost convinced it will happen again. Whether it be the front runner or somebody else, will bring in another rookie manager. I'm convinced of it.
We're going to come to Twitter questions that have come in before we've gone live. There's a few of them to get through at the end, and as I say, we'll try and pick out some comments as well. Kenny, I think it's important to make the distinction between the fact that this situation is a mess and it's of the board's own doing, and the credentials of Postecoglou as a candidate. We don't know enough about him, and we can't proclaim to know enough about him. I think it'd be remiss of us to sit here and say that in the last couple of days of reading stuff or watching whatever we could find out about him, that we could talk about his style of football or how he is as a manager with any real certainty. I don't think we can do that. There is obviously the convenience, if you like, of links with the City Football Group, the same as Fergal Harkin. He's currently managing Yokohama Marinos, who are owned by the City Football Group. And I think the problem a lot of fans have is that it seems rushed, and it seems like a phone call to either Peter Lawwell's son or Fergal Harkin to say, who can we get at short notice?
Yeah, and I think what they've probably done is they've probably recognised when Eddie Howe didn't put pen to paper, they must have some contingency. They can't start the season, with John Kennedy. That would just even be beyond comprehension. So they've had to have somebody in reserve. But who of a high pedigree is going to sit in reserve in the knowledge that you're just waiting for a deal to collapse? If you phone up Nuno Gomez and say, do you fancy just sitting in the background, Nuno, for another couple of months and not sign anyone else, just in the off chance we need you? He would tell you where to go. So they've their contingency is awful, but they've let themselves come to a point whereby they have no other choice now. Even if he comes in from Japan, presumably he's going to have to quarantine. We're going to be lucky if he's there to take the first session of pre-season training. I mean, they've put themselves in just the single worst position, and it really makes you think about their scouting and their system. Even out with football, in any business, one of the most high priority things is succession. You think about what you've got now, but you need to always think about what you've got in the future. And there's even more weight to that for us this season, because it's not I wouldn't even say it's an ordinary managerial appointment. It's an appointment whereby you're trying to rebuild the club. You're going to, not ordinarily when you're a manager, your first task isn't to sign 12 players. It's maybe to sign 2 or 3. This guy's going to have to sign a dozen. So they must have been thinking in their mind, the absolute worst case scenario that we must avoid is that we don't give someone that task who's not equipped for it. And that's where they've ended up, because they've not had the foresight to think of a decent plan B. They've not had the bravery, it would appear, to go against some higher calibre candidates. I know it's difficult to get people to Scottish football. I accept that. But there's enough about Celtic that we do not need to end up with a manager that's just taken a club to mid-table in the Japanese league. And that's not me being clever. That's obvious. And that's where they've taken us. So they failed, and they failed in a gross way that I'm really, really worried about. Fergal Harkin's not even a part of our club. The Man City, we're not part of the Man City group. But why is all this stuff swimming around in the background? Is Desmond going to punt his shares in there in a couple of years? I mean, that would be awful as well. So that's another cause for concern. I don't know where he's came from. Does Lawwell watch the Japanese league? Of course he doesn't. He wouldn't even have met this person. He won't have looked this person in the whites of the eyes to gauge his interest. That's how appalling it is. So their strategy for finding a successor is an abomination, and it just has to lie at the door of Lawwell and Desmond. And even by their dire standards this season, I'm amazed by it. I'm genuinely, for men of their experience and pedigree, albeit they've messed up this season, I'm astonished that they've left us this open.
Yes, it is incredible. And to come back again, Martin, to whether the club should be taking it their word or not, that they've kept communication open with other candidates and that they were in advanced talks. That was the official line, that they were in advanced talks with another candidate. The thing about Postecoglou is his name was never mentioned in any bookmaker's list, in any speculation, in any newspaper report. His name appeared from nowhere on Friday afternoon. So they have a job trying to convince us that all along Postecoglou has been a candidate.
Yeah, I don't believe it. I don't believe who their plan B is. I'm not even sure that they had a plan B. As Kenny says, contingency is critical in these circumstances. Read out some of the statements earlier on around, I'll maybe go back into managerial football in the summer. To not have a contingency and succession plan is just incredible. But again, back to what Kenny says, who with any credibility is going to sit there and say, yep, I'll wait a few months, I'll wait another few months. So you just be sitting with your fingers crossed saying, I hope somebody's still available, or I hope somebody becomes available. And that's where we are. And it's panic now because the pressure will just mount on appointing somebody, and I'm pretty confident we will appoint somebody in the next week or so, but it'll not be what the fans want. They'll feel the pressure. As expected, there's a few thousand fans renewed their season tickets. Most of them probably did it thinking how was signing on Tuesday. I certainly know loads of guys on my bus that did it on day one, and then day two we get the bad news. So it'll be interesting to see the breakdown of many did it pre-announcement versus post-announcement. But great to hear a lot of fans have done it. But equally, there'll be a huge number that they won't go near it. So Celtic will feel that pressure. They've got the month of June to sort it out before that date's upon us. So I don't think they had a plan B for some of the reasons that Kenny's articulated already. I don't think they had a plan B. And there's an argument, Paul, that says, so had we made some early decisions? We had some managers out there that we should have been shown an interest in, that appeared to be interested in us, that have now made decisions to go elsewhere. So Marsh and Marcel they're away to Parma and Leipzig. So they both expressed their interest. They both appeared to be interested in Celtic, and we didn't do anything about it. We've missed out on another couple of managers. And as the weeks pass by, managers will be wanting to get into other clubs if they're available. So the situation will continue to deteriorate rather than improve. The season's finished now, so the managerial merry-go-round is not likely to change an awful lot if managers have been sacked or chosen to resign. They've probably done it by now. So the situation's just going to get worse and worse. I believe that possibly somebody like a Roy Keane may be in the background, but was he formally approached? Is he the answer? There's chat about we said no to him and we chose Delia instead. I don't believe that's true. I believe Roy Keane said no to us because of the budget. That was the stronger story at the time that happened. So is he going to be given a greater budget now, or is he going to be interested for what reason? Because he's enjoyed management? Do we think he would come in and hang about? No chance. Not somebody walks away from the World Cup. There's not somebody that's going to hang about in the Goldfish Bowl of Glasgow when the chips are down. So I don't know who the plan B is. We would need to be extremely lucky that somebody who, for whatever reason, I'm going to say Yogi Hughes, but I'm sure Celtic aren't going to appoint Yogi Hughes, but somebody who's just moved on from their last job, but who's out there. I mean, we mentioned, Nuno. Would Nuno come to Celtic? It'd be a outstanding appointment, but what's the chances of that? If Eddie Howe won't come for budget reasons, I'm sure Nuno would be the same. He'll want to spend money as well, and he's left his last club because of lack of ambition. So all these big names are looking for a club with ambition, and the ambition comes with a budget.
Yeah, and as you keep saying, Martin, that history's laced with these underwhelming managerial appointments, and you make a good point about Ronnie Dyler there as well. I don't think he was ever the first choice to be the Celtic manager back in 2014, but we ended up with him for one reason or another. I just want to bring in this comment for Brad Cooper. PR disaster as per usual. I think I'm in isolation, but if he was one of the front runners from the start, people would be more accepting. I actually think that's a good point. Postecoglou, I mean, his credentials, he's taken Australia to 2 World Cups. He did leave before the 2018 World Cup started. He won the Asian Cup with Australia. He's won the A-League with Brisbane Roar. He won the J-League with Yokohama Marinos in 2019. 55 years old, he's been coaching for 25 years, never managed in Europe, as we've discussed already. But he does seem to have a very attacking, demanding style of play. Well documented the last couple of days that Jackson Irvine in Open Goal described the style of play as hectic when he played under him for Australia. And I think people can see in what they've read and learned and listened to in the past couple of days they can see positives to Postecoglou, Kenny. But again, it's the whole scenario, the circumstances around about it, how rushed it seems. He's obviously going to come in and be on the back foot from day one because he's an unknown quantity, because the fans are disillusioned and frustrated with the club. The media, as it's seen throughout recent history, are very hostile to unknown foreign managers. We've seen it in Dyla's time here as well. What do you think? I mean, I actually listened. I've linked up in the description below a podcast that I listened to today with Ange Postecoglou, talking about his philosophy, his style of play, where he's worked. And it's remarkable that he openly says, my style of play is so demanding that it sometimes takes 6 months, even 12, for people to fully buy into it and for it to click. That is the biggest worry for me, regardless of any other credentials or strengths you want to talk about. For a style of play to be so radical, it can take 6 months to start to click. That is time that we don't have.
Yeah, because foreign managers don't get that amount of time. That's the thing with an Eddie Howe appointment, a solid British manager. They would have got more time to try and embed their ideas, and they would have had more patience. I mean, look at the number of foreign managers. Venglos failed. Delia, okay, won the league, but he was always going to win the league, but he failed. Other guys coming into Glasgow, Caixinha, fail. Paul Le Guen, fail. Yeah, they all fail. Wim Janssen did well to win the league, but that's the exception to the norm. So it's a really risky path. He's only ever a draw away from a crisis at Celtic. If Brisbane Roar draw or Yokohama draw, I can't imagine it's going to matter to them a great deal. It's a completely, he's going to have 60,000 people breathing down his neck, and he's going to have a media fanfare exploding every time he drops points. Now, he might be able to handle that. And my God, I hope he does. And I've bought my book. I will be there supporting him all the step of the way. We have to caveat what we're saying here with. This isn't personal against him. But all of that is unknown. And that's the amount. You've got to balance risk. And the balance of risk is all wrong. It's weighted the wrong way, and it's because of the board. Another big thing I'm worried about with his appointment is, how is he going to attract players? Now, we need to sign possibly a dozen players. I don't think that's overstating it. That sounds outlandish, but I think he is going to have to sign of that order of players. We don't have cash reserves to spend £5 or £6 million in each of those signings. It's going to have to be Bosmans. We're going to have to be intelligent. We're going to have to get people that are a bit under the radar that will come to the club because of the manager. I mean, when Howe was linked with that Everton striker that was worth 25 million quid was coming on to a free, I thought he's a good chance he'll come. He's got history with Howe. Danny Rose came on to a free. Normally you would think that's about out of our league, but Eddie Howe, that might come. There's not a hope in hell players like that will come anymore. The dynamic has changed completely. Do we flood our league with low value players from Japan? Of course we can. That scares me. What is going to happen with his background team? Because I tell you what would be an absolute disgrace if John Kennedy and Gavin Strachan start in that dugout again next season. There'd be very, very little that would push me not to renew my book, but my God, that would be something that would push me to the limit. And nothing against them personally as well, but they've been endemic in the failure. Look what happened when Kennedy took over and was given the freedom to deploy his own ideas. It was worse. So he's going to have them back there, to have people who have been uninspired by the setup, like Callum McGregor, Eddie, although he's going to go, for them to come back into training in day one and see them again, it's going to drag them down right back to where they left off. I don't know I've not heard anything about his background team. If we can't get a background team to come from Bournemouth, we're unlikely to get them to come from Japan. So I just don't know where all of that leaves us. There's so many risks around the whole thing. And it might work. It might work. But the likelihood of it working is way lower than the threshold that they should be gauging themselves against when they're making these appointments. So, I wish him well. And he does. There are some positives that would appear. His style of play suits Celtic. It would appear that he's quite an assertive, aggressive person. That's good. All of that is good. But the risk outweighs the balance of risk is all wrong. And I keep coming back to it, but the board have shafted the fans.
I think you make a good point there about Eddie Howe and time. At the time when we thought that was going on in the background, you can recognise that there may be some work starting to get done, not in an official capacity, but that the wheels are turning and that the issues are already established, and they can be, as for day one that he comes in the job, he can hit the ground running. But we end up in this situation because of the rushed nature of this. that's the biggest drawback, that whoever it is that comes in now is like from nowhere. They're absolutely from nowhere, and they have all of these problems to sort. I want to get to the Twitter questions before we finish up. Sandy Reid, will Harkin come in as director of football, and will we be stuck with John Kennedy and Gavin Strachan to support the manager? Kenny, you've just covered that as well as any of us could. Martin, you don't want John Kennedy with the best will in the world. I feel like his cycle at Celtic coaching the first team is over, because he's been here for such a long period of time, and as Kenny says, there's a lot of baggage there from the disaster that has been this season, and him taking over the Neil Lennon period. You just don't want that same energy when you're trying to refresh and totally rebuild next season.
We need a manager with backroom staff who can inspire. We talked about Yogi earlier on. I think we need to labour the point. Yogi, you bring him into a backroom staff position, because he will get the best. He'll build a relationship with the team and he'll get the best out of them. But we need people of that ilk. John Kennedy's uninspiring. When you listen to his interviews, whilst he can articulate himself relatively well, he wouldn't inspire me as a player. He wouldn't get the hairs on the back of your neck to stand up like Martin O'Neill did down at Anfield that night that got us a victory. Those are the type of managers that we need. And this chap that we're talking about, who's been the front runner, I'm not sure that we need that aggression, that arrogance, that directness. I think we need a Brendan Rodgers, a Martin O'Neill type person who will come in and bring in some people management. We need that more than ever. And they'll come and they'll bring a bit of calmness to the club. I mean, there is so much excitement and furore just now around the place that we need that calmness more than ever. John Kennedy, the last time he did anything for the club, God love him, was that night in Barcelona when he was fantastic alongside David Marshall. What a night he had that night. But that was his last contribution. He should not be anywhere near the club right now. We should have went with Neil Lennon, and we should have had a replacement in far, far sooner. We've just prolonged the agony. And if you're talking about bringing somebody in from Japan, I mean, we read it when we read stories of players who came to the club and they couldn't settle in Glasgow, they couldn't get used to the culture, the country, all that stuff. A manager's no different. A manager has to come in and get used to the place. So we're talking about bringing somebody in who's going to come to Glasgow. Welcome to Glasgow, right? We expect you to succeed from the day. There's absolutely no chance. We're setting ourselves up for failure. But John Kennedy and the whole of the rest of the backroom staff have to go. That has to be a complete clear out, because they're all as liable. We can't blame it on Neil Lennon and say the rest of them were superstars, because the rest of them would have been able to influence. A big failure this season was the players' attitude and their mentality and all the rest of it. Now, that can't all be down to Lennon. That's to be down to everybody who's involved in that. The recruitment's been an absolute shambles. We've spent quite a bit of money, but you're looking at Tony yesterday, 33 goals. He was somebody who we were trying to attract to the club, who I believe was interested in the club. We didn't get him.
He was at Lennox Town.
Yeah,
we didn't get him.
And who did we bring in instead? Absolute failures. So the whole lot of them should have been away a long, long time ago. It's beyond me why we held on to them. I would rather they brought in somebody else as a caretaker manager on a temporary basis than just stayed with the status quo and put all the pressure on Neil Lennon. It should have been a complete clear out a long, long time ago. And that's the biggest mistake.
Yeah, sorry, you make a good point about Ivan Toney there. The club is getting far too good at not closing deals. There's been so many instances in recent seasons where, whether it be players and now obviously a high-profile manager, where we just can't seem to get a deal done, and that is a massive, massive problem. John Paul Connors touches on something that A. Parker does on Twitter as well. Do Celtic already need to accept that Europe is out of the question next season? I also believe winning the title is now practically impossible. Kenny, you have, I think, briefly mentioned those same sentiments already tonight. It's just such a tall order. It was a tall order with someone of the calibre of Eddie Howe coming in. This high-risk sort of appointment, I mean, it puts everything in doubt.
Yeah, it'd be a miracle of getting the Champions League. I thought that anyway. I mean, in my head, I've written that off. We still need to get in the Europa League just because of the players that we have. I mean, it would be really defeatist to say we're out of Europe already, because there's different layers to how you get, you drop through the qualifying. So I wouldn't write off Europe entirely. We've still got to try and get in the Europa League, because then you're really in financial constraint if you don't. The league, it's impossible to start a season as a Celtic supporter to say that the league's gone. You simply can't. Do my heart of hearts, do I believe they're going to win it? No. I have to be honest and say no. But they have to start with the belief that they're going to. I mean, I don't think Rangers, I think the points did flatter them a bit. That might seem like a biased thing to say in this show, but I don't think for a 100-point team, I think they are catchable. I don't know what's going to happen. They seem to, if they get in the Champions League, they'll probably keep their players. They might not. They might sell some. They might face a wee bit of disruption of their own because they'll be affected by the pandemic. So there might be a natural closing of what was a 25-point gap last season the other way. But I don't really know how to. We just have to proceed, and we have to get behind the manager in a personal way. You've said rightly, Paul, that the media will be a big threat. The media will pounce over every single nuance of, the way in which his mannerisms, the way in which he communicates with people. They'll twist that and they'll try and turn that against him, and they'll make him feel uncomfortable. And he might be prepared to handle that. But if it was someone of a higher caliber, the media wouldn't play with him that way. So he's really up against it in terms of, is he going to settle? Do I think we're going to win the league and get in the Champions League? No. We have to believe that we try and at least give ourselves a title race. But it's important that we're in the Europa League.
Aye, absolutely. I think you can see in the comments and on Twitter, anywhere online, really, there's so much frustration. A lot of it misguided. People are unhappy. That's absolutely understandable. But it's so draining. It has been so draining, and an appointment like Postecoglou only fuels that stuff because you've got half the people who really want to look at its positives, and some people have said, and I think rightly, that if he was the guy who succeeded Brendan Rodgers, then that might have been the right bridge between Rodgers' style and Postecoglou's, because I think they're relatively similar in terms of style of play and things like that. But there's other people who just reject the whole notion of him already because he has been plucked from thin air, so it seems, and he's never managed in Europe. And there's plenty of reasons that point to why it's high risk, Martin. The last question I want to touch on tonight is from Gary Oliver on Twitter. Why has arguably the biggest rebuild in years been left to a 55-year-old coach who's never managed in Europe? Where is the bright young appointment to galvanise his support, and why is there still no development on a director of football? The club is worryingly floundering, and I think worryingly floundering is the perfect phrase to sum up where the club are at. That's the sense that I get from everything that's going on, and that's not a good place to be.
No, and great questions in there. The director of football, I've touched on this before. I'm not overly concerned about the director of football. If you do get a good one, you could come in and get you some good appointments, etc. But if it's not a director of football, then it's somebody else on the board or a collective group of people who'll try and achieve the same thing. And all of that comes down to the club's ambition and how much, we've said it several times on tonight's show, how much they're prepared to spend. So director of football would be good to get some clarity on, is that going to be the structure or not? But I don't worry as much about that as I do about the managerial appointment and the coaching staff and getting the right people. Is this guy the right guy to come in and sign? As Kenny says, 12 players, probably more than that. I would suggest he's not. I'm not sure there's many managers out there that could say they've come to a club as big as Celtic and had to start from scratch with very little money. I'm not sure. I mean, this is quite a unique situation. When was the last time Celtic were in a situation like this, where you had, your stars moving on, and every area of the pitch almost were weak. We're weak at the back. We're weak in goals. Our striker's going to move on, and you're left with 3 or 4 half decent midfielders. That's all we've got. That's how bad it is. So it's a tough question to answer, and we're going to have to move quickly, but we're going to have to get the right appointment. It almost feels like the impossible dream. The board play a big part in this with regards to their ambition. The supporters play a big part in this, and I understand their agitation and their frustration. There's an argument that says this is a bigger year than last year, which I never thought I'd find myself saying. How can you get bigger than 10 in a row? But it is. And if you're to try and put a figure on how much money we've thrown away in the last couple of years, it's an absolute fortune. Between the contracts being wound down, not winning the league, the merchandise, the money we're now going to have to spend to bring players in, you'll be up at £100 million quite easily. Adding all that up, it's extraordinary. But I think it was you, Paul, that said earlier on in the show about the allure of this 40 or 50 million if we win the league next year. So if we lose out on that as well, and you say that over a short period of time we're up at £150 million that we've not taken advantage of because of the negligence of the board, it's how many years did it take to recover from that? Because your budget just decreases and decreases all the time. Mm-hmm. So none of us have the answer. I think we were all hoping that how would be the answer. I personally thought it was coming. I thought it was coming next week. I thought it's taken a long time, but there'd be a good reason. There would be some contractual obligation. or he didn't want to announce his backroom staff, but they had already agreed to come, but he didn't want to announce them until they were in a position to say that they were available. I just felt it was something like that. I was shocked to see the announcement, but we have to stop talking about Eddie Howe because it's not happening, and we have to put as much pressure as we can on the board to get the right appointment, not one tomorrow, but we need one in the next couple of weeks, don't we? We need to be the right person.
Aye, absolutely. And there's so much going on around Celtic just now. It's hard. We've been sitting here for 40 minutes, and probably a lot of what we've discussed has had a negative spin on it. But I do actively encourage everybody still listening to if you haven't already, go and listen to that Mastermind podcast with Ange Postecoglou and see what you make of it. I was impressed listening to him. He does seem very Australian in that he's unshakable in his confidence and fully believes in his style of play. I just can't sit here with any confidence and talk about his credentials as if I know them, because I don't. And I don't want to come across as someone who is trying to educate you on him when I don't know about him myself. I think that goes for us all. He is an unknown quantity, but if he comes in, I absolutely want him to be successful. We'll just have to wait and see. That is it for tonight. Thank you for watching. Like the video, comment with your own thoughts below. Please don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. We'll have more videos coming up as this process develops and whenever an announcement eventually does happen. Thank you for joining us tonight. Cheers.